Group leaders, we are on week 5 of Story Through the Bible, the Old Testament, and now we are on to the Abrahamic covenant. And God's making that covenant with Abraham as he called him out of Ur of the Chaldees. Before we get into the lesson today, I want to go over something we talked about whenever we had our meetings before this semester of Life Group started. I was talking about having your group pick a mission project. And so I just wanted to remind you of that and encourage you maybe even this week to begin to talk about that and get suggestions from your group about some things that they think that could be done effectively. As you know, we're going to be having Acts 1:8 that's going to happen here in October, but would love to see your group do some kind of mission project together in this springtime. Could be towards the end of spring, maybe in May, April or May, whenever it warms up. Whatever opportunities there might be actually somebody in your group that needs something done at their home. That would be okay to do. It's helping out brothers and sisters. It's finding needs around the community that could be met by your group, whatever that looks like. It's a great way to solidify your group, to bring people together, increase fellowship, work side by side with people. It really helps, I believe, especially with the guys in your group, to build camaraderie and unity, because guys build relationships shoulder to shoulder instead of face to face most of the time. And so I want to encourage you to go ahead and be looking for a mission project. So this week we've got the story of Abraham as God calls him and makes a covenant with him. Begin to look at this account here in Genesis chapter 12. I think it's important for you to understand that this Abrahamic covenant really influences the whole motif of Genesis and really the whole of the Old Testament. Because this covenant that he makes with Abraham strings itself through the whole Old Testament, the blessings of his people, the blessing of the offspring, and all of those things will eventually lead to the promised Messiah. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to email you a copy of a chart that I had to do for one of my classes a long time ago, and of the Abrahamic covenant and how it tracks all the way through Genesis. And you can see this string at least through the book of Genesis. And then as you go throughout the Old Testament, as we continue through this, maybe you'll be able to just see those places that deal with the land and the blessing and the offspring promises that God has given to Abraham here in this covenant. It's pretty long. It's about 12 or 13 pages. But at the very end of it, it kind of gives you some instructions on how to read the chart. Now, I don't expect you to go through that whole chart, but it might just be interesting for you as you look at this story and to understand how it affects the whole. That Abrahamic covenant is essential in understanding the storyline of the Bible. And so, as you story through this, it's not a very long passage this week. It's just 8 verses in chapter 12. And so, as we look at the questions this week, I think, I don't think, I know we need to take out the word think again. And I know I keep saying this over and over, but I don't want us to be speculating whenever it comes to Scripture. I want us to go back and find the reality and the truth of what the Scripture says. And if you use that word think, it automatically transitions in people's minds. I can speculate, or I can just imagine what is going on here, rather than going back and seeing in the Scripture itself what the truth is. And so, again, take that word out. And then as you go through it, it's got some pretty good questions, but they require some follow-up questions. It says, what did God tell Abraham to do? That's pretty straightforward. How did Abraham respond? Was it hard for him to respond? Why or why not? How much did God tell Abram about his future when he told him to leave home? Now, these next 2 questions, I think, are what requires the follow-up questions, because it says, what risk did Abram take to obey God? How much did he have to lose? I guess 3 questions. What did he give up? Those are all great questions. It looks at the life of Abraham. But then I think you can automatically, after people answer that, you can go back and say, how much does God tell you about your future? Um, has He called you to leave your home? What risks is God asking you to take to obey Him? How much do you have to lose? What are you going to give up? So all of those questions can be used as application questions, because remember, we want to take this scripture and not just look at it as a good story, but understand that this applies to us. So as we're going on here, what did God promise Abram? How did his promises fit the mission for the world, fit his mission for the world? How did it relate to the instructions he had given Adam and Eve? Um, I think you could use some follow up questions there. What promises has God given you? Um, how does His promises to you fit into His mission for the world? Now, obviously, um, you know, we look at Matthew 28, 19 and 20. He's promised to um, go with us into the world, never leave us or forsake us. So, like, there's many promises through the New Testament that He has given us, and they all relate to His mission for the world. And so, next it says, "How old was Abram when God made those promises?" I did not look at that. So anyway, find that in the scripture. And how difficult do you think it was for Abram to believe those promises? Again, that's speculation. But how hard is it for us to believe the promises of God? That's a great application question. Why? Is it difficult? If so, why is it difficult for us to believe those promises? Myriad of reasons: fear, doubt, um, past things that have affected us, of various reasons why. Um, what did Abram do when he got to Canaan? In what ways is God's guidance for us similar to the way that He guided Abram? In what ways are Abram's faith and obedience examples for us? Those are application. That last one is application question 2. I just don't think we need to leave all the application to the end, because there's some very good points in there that you could follow up with questions. Now, I hope these are going well for you. I know our group has really um, enjoyed this study so far, and it's even, I believe, helping us to see a greater picture of who God is and who we are as a result of who He is. And so, like I said, I'm going to email you a copy of that Abrahamic covenant that you can look over before Sunday. And if you have any questions about this week's lesson, just give me a holler and I'll do the best I can. Thanks.